Sell in May and walk away is the ancient wisdom that many people just repeat ad nauseum. And on this video, we're going to be going over, is that actually true and what to be kind of expecting, especially for this particular year, as this was a very special year. In fact, in multiple ways, we have elections and then also halving as well. Other than that, I think it's time to just jump out on this one. We're actually going to start this one on a slightly different angle right on over here, as I do want to follow up very, very quickly on the MetaSignals Bitcoin position that was fired off. I believe this was a little bit late last week when Bitcoin was trading at 62,563. And in this case, it does look like not only has target 1 been hit, but target 2 is, well, getting closed upon perhaps in the not so distant future at just around 67,000 bucks. And I do want to say this service, out of the last 50 signals, I was looking at them, out of the last 50, 45 have actually reached at least target 1, which was, I don't know, pretty damn cool to see. Anyways, of course, MetaSignals is a project that I'm personally invested in, so I'm heavily biased towards it. But if you do want to find out more information about how you can get fucking spoon-fed, just spoon-feed your damn self, or get spoon-fed yourself, then there is links in the description below. All right, sweet. Let's jump right into the good old monthly analysis. So here I've marked off all of the Mays in Bitcoin's history with the green and red vertical bars. The red ones are ones that happen specifically on election years. But in this case, we can see that in general, just at first glance, it's pretty close to actually a 50-50% chance that we do see a positive or negative close. And in fact, if I do go over here to the full data that I've recorded this morning, we can see that out of 13, or actually technically out of 14 Mays, 7 of those, no, 8 of those were positive. The reason why I have 7 right here is because I was unable to get the actual price action data for this first one in May of 2010, but that was obviously a positive close. But as you can see on TradingView at the top left-hand corner, it just records 0000 for the open and close. So, you know, the price at that point was so small that it doesn't even register, but obviously this one was positive. So 8 out of 14 is a little bit better than a coin flip in this case in terms of closing positively. And if we were to put that in percentage terms, that would be 57.14%. Now, what's interesting about this is that we can look at the average returns for the winning months, which was on average 50% or about 50.5%. However, the first one that I actually have recorded over here, which was in 2011, did have a pretty outsized return, I will say. This was almost 150% gainer in 1 month. I think that's probably an outlier. So in this case, if I get rid of that, it becomes a little bit more reasonable-ish in terms of Bitcoin at around 34% for the winning months. And we do see that in general, when it has been a winning month, it actually has been like pretty big. There's really only been one time, and that was in 2012. Yeah, 2012 right here, where it was, you know, below 5%. All the other ones were either very close to double digits or significantly deep into them, as you can see. Anyways, on the loss side, we do see that the average losing months for May has been about 14.5%. So, you know, that is, I would say, I mean, it's not super significant for Bitcoin, but it's definitely significant for, you know, normal investors, I suppose. And of course, this all depends upon where Bitcoin closed at this month of April. So we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves right here, but we do have about a week left in the trading month to go. So in this case, if we were to kind of assume that Bitcoin maybe closes somewhere around where Bitcoin's currently at, about 66,000 bucks, which is essentially the middle of the current range, you know, what would basically 30% to the upside look like? That actually puts Bitcoin at around 87 to 88,000 bucks. Also in alignment with one of our, or actually a couple of our different targets that we've been speaking about in yesterday's video and actually several videos prior as well. And to the downside, again, assuming that Bitcoin closes somewhere around here, what was it again? Like 17? No, 14. Let's just call it 15% to the downside look like. Guessing that puts Bitcoin close to... puts Bitcoin at around 58,600, which is nearly the low of this month as it is so far, that being April, I should say. Anyways, going back to the data over here, like we did say at the beginning of this video, this year is a special year. It is an election year, as Bitcoin has lived through 3 prior election years and also a halving year as well. And these red vertical bars represent those times when we have seen well, that particular setup on an election year with halvings. So in this case, we can see just, again, at first glance, all of the red vertical bars actually were positively closed months. Now, they weren't like massively riotously positive months. In this case, we can see the gains right here were about 9.5%, just under 19%, and about 4.5% for those 3 prior Mays. But they all were positive, which I did think was interesting. And if we were to take, whoops, I actually did this wrong over here. Hold on just one moment. I do want to see what the average was for these. Let's just get it right there, boom and boom. Yeah, that would be an average gain of about 11%, which probably sounds a little bit more, I don't know, reasonable to myself. And of course, we would have put that number into motion right on over here. Let's see what that would kind of look like if Bitcoin were to, again, close somewhere around here. What does 10% to the upside look like? That puts Bitcoin at around $74,000, which actually is, I believe, target 3. Yeah, very close to target 3 for that Meta Signals alert, which does actually have a very, very low probability. I think that one's in like the 30%, if memory serves me correctly. But going back into it right here, there is also something to be interested in as well. So in election years, when we have seen that, when we have seen that April was actually April's been kind of hit or miss in election years, but what I should say is that the second quarter of election years has usually been green. In fact, actually, it's always been green because I already know this because I've already done the data over here. And so the second quarter of election years, has always returned green second quarters with an average gain of about almost 47%, as we can see. So that would essentially be the data from. Let me just put it on a quarterly right here. There we go. And yeah, I think that just about gets it. Yeah. Okay, cool. So cool. You can see that, again, all of these red vertical bars, nice and green there. Not anything super crazy in the grand scheme of things. But generally, getting ready for some more significant upside basically into the end of the year. That would be in many of these cases, like really fucking big gains, which is why I do still think that this current cycle, if we do see it continue, and especially if we see it continue in May, I do think that this one's going to be very short-lived. I do think that we see the end of the cycle before the end of this year. Just personal opinion. But as it is right now, let's kind of see where things are at. Again, just under 47%. What would that look like on top of basically the open of this quarter, as we are in the second month basically of this quarter? Or sorry, we're going to be going into the second month of this quarter, yes. So what was it, 40% or somewhere around there? That starts to put Bitcoin, let me just double check. Yeah, 46%. That starts to put Bitcoin around $100,000. So again, playing around with the statistics here, it is one of those things where it's like, look, there's going to be some variance within these results. We expect that. It is very interesting as well that we have seen these statistics for the average months pretty much play out since, I think it was August, July or August of the past year till now. I think this past month of April was the only time that we haven't really seen it play too much in alignment with that. We were looking for mostly like a kind of slower month, basically. And in this case, we have certainly got a slower month. There's no doubt about that. But slightly red as of right now. Anyways, my point is that if that were to play out, we do see Bitcoin head up even above $100,000 this year. Again, sounds kind of crazy as of right now. Probably with a lot of that done, closer to the end of the year, I would be very comfortable with saying we've seen the highs, we are going to see the highs for this cycle before the end of 2024. And again, I am going to at some point put together like a mega video as to, all the confirming I shouldn't say confirming, but I should say confluent factors that support that statement. But I'm still waiting for a few more things to kind of come into the back view mirror, and then we can, do some on that. And of course, it would also realistically, we'd really have to see like continuation of May. And that actually is what a lot of that's going to hinge upon. If we do see continuation, 2 new highs in May, okay, I think that scenario is going to be very, 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 very valid, or very likely to be valid, I should say. So yeah. anyways, that would become a more reasonable topic around that time. So now we can move on and we can go into, of course, the 2-day time frame for Bitcoin here. If we are looking at Caretaker's RSI, we actually can see some hidden bullish evidence from this low connected with this low right here. So very far away from each other, but ultimately it is in there, and it will be, and it actually already is confirmed. It was confirmed in the last closure, I suppose. So, in the short term, does Bitcoin try another upside move? Perhaps yes. Again, ultimately, I'm not super immediately bullish on Bitcoin, especially as long as it's below about $69,000 and change on a higher term time frame closing basis. Going over to the HPDR bands right here, you can see something of great interest actually, or at least great interest to myself, in the sense that the HPDR bands blue range has stepped up quite a fair bit, with Bitcoin finding its footing on the bottom side of that range with last week's low, as you can see right here, now opening within that range to start off this week, and the median has jumped up significantly higher, basically to prior all-time highs at around $74,000. Here's the thing. With this particular setup, if we continue to see volatility contraction, that will favor upside. What would essentially what would cause volatility contraction? More sideways action, or just a generally, not that interesting next week or two here, which I do think is probably likely for the month of April. And as we went over in the month of May, Bitcoin, a lot of the time, it doesn't really do a whole hell of a lot, either to the upside or the downside. So again, I do think that this continues to favor upside moves. Now, of course, technically speaking, I'd like to see Bitcoin actually close above the median here before I, get full on bullish and start targeting somewhere around the top side of at least the 38.2 level, probably even the 50% level. And guess where those are situated as of right now? $90,000 and $95,500 respectively. So at that point, targets from this angle start to get confirmed as well. And I also do think that it's just very interesting here that we see nearly the same setup that we saw back on over in the January correction, as we're starting to see now, with Bitcoin again trading above around the 50% level, again even above the 50% level over here, okay, all the way up, corrects into the blue range, all right, rejects the top side, comes back down, plays bing and bong all the way down to the bottom side of the 38.2 level, and in that case puts in a nice hammer dildo, and volatility contracts, HPDRO reaches the exact same level right there and right there. Volatility is literally at the same level as well. In fact, I should actually do it from this angle. I think this will make a little bit more sense. But you can see right here, literally right there, and literally right there. It's very interesting to me. Very, very interesting to me. Of course, I'm not talking about the moving average on this one as of right now. I'm just talking about the nominal value. So you have a very similar setup. I still do think that Bitcoin could very easily put another downside move to the low 60,000s, but with the way that things are shaping up right here, I think it is becoming less and less likely you do see another move below 60,000. And if you do see another move below 60,000, that's probably going to be indicative of a much more prolonged correction, a multi-month correction coming up here. And at that point, I would actually renege the statement that I made earlier that Bitcoin's going to make its highs this year. I would say Bitcoin probably spends the rest of the year, a good portion of the rest of the year correcting, and then makes new highs in 2025, and that's probably going to be your next cycle high, something like that. But for right now, things are in a more aggressive posturing here, looking more like continuation than not. Again, I wouldn't really call continuation until we see at least back above the median. On CME, the median's a little bit more reasonable, I guess is a word. It's currently at 71,550 instead of on spot price action, which is a few $1,000 higher. But so if I did see it pop back above on CME, I'd say that's probably a good setup as well, or a good signal that the spot will do the same. So ultimately, it's going to be another. I still think it's a waiting game until basically now, until the end of the month. But this is starting to favor a lot more of the boo laws here, and really, unless the Bitcoin comes back down below last week's low, I think very likely the lows are already in, and you might get one more shot at like $61,000. If it does come back down below last week's low, okay, I think something new is going on. You can see much more deep corrections, closer to low 50,000s, and we're probably in for a multi-month correction. But until that happens, it's looking more and more like Bitcoin's actually finding its footing here. So I think that's probably a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular video, getting a little bit too long as of right now. And I just realized my camera is off. What have you done? I'm faceless. Oh, and Elsa's cat coughing in the background. It seems like she's sick, and I'm probably getting sick myself because I'm not feeling it today, if you can't already tell. But yeah, I should probably go charge my camera, and I'll come back at you with another with another video tomorrow. Until then, as always, want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and fuck you, and I will see you tomorrow.